through the, thank you. I'm going to run through the guidance notes that are on the website, put a bit of context behind those, and then I'll run through the application form and give you an idea of the kinds of things that we're looking for and also what we're not looking for to help you fill those in. I'll then be handing over to Matt Howgate, who will be helping us with the financial aspects of the assessment, and he will go through the budget and cash flow templates that you'll need to complete. And then we'll move on to questions, and we'll try and get to that point as quickly as we can. We'll pick up as many as we can today. If we don't get to your question, we will respond to it, and we'll update the FAQs on our website, so you'll be able to see the response there. If you have a query that is very specific to your organisation, we may ask that we'll come back to you separately on it just to save time, but we will respond to it, don't worry. Just a couple of general things before I start talking about the guidance, a couple of queries that we've had already. So this is a new funding round. It's not a continuation. It doesn't matter if you've been funded by us before or not. It doesn't matter whether you've applied to us, been rejected, or you've never heard of us before. So don't worry about that. Applications are open now, as I think you all know, until the 5th of May. And we anticipate letting everybody know the outcome of the application week commencing the 29th of May. So it's a fairly tight turnaround because we want to get this money out to you as quickly as we possibly can. The plan then, with the grant being in place and projects to start from the beginning of July, and they'll run to the end of March 2025. So it's a 21-month grant, which is quite hard for me to get my head around. Just to let you know, the total pot of available funding is just over £10 million. Grants being made across England and Wales. We anticipate making in the region of 60 to 70 grants, so around between 100,000 and 200,000 across the 21-month period. You'll see, and we'll mention it when we go through the guidance, that there may be some exceptions to that, but just generally to give you a ballpark figure, that's what we are anticipating. Just a quick word on the monitoring and evaluation. Now, that's going to be quite a big part of this grant, but we are still working on finalising the M&E framework. So I'm sorry I don't have that to share with you today. We will share with you the closest thing to a final framework that we can while the application window is still open. But that does mean that I'm not going to be able to helpfully answer any specific questions on the M&E today, but as I say, we will share that, and obviously we will answer any questions that you have as we go through. Right, I think that was all the general stuff that I wanted to mention. So I'm going to quickly go through the guidance that's available on the website. So I'm assuming that most of you will have read it already, so I'm not going to go through it word by word, but I thought it'd be helpful just to pull out a few key things so that you can kind of focus your thoughts when you are starting to draft the application. So the first thing to bear in mind is there's kind of two kind of broad aims for this programme. One is around the service delivery itself, but there's another aim around collecting the data and building the evidence base. And the reason for that, as many of you will know, is that we use the data and learning from the grants that we make to make the case for future funding. So there's a specific aim in this programme around developing the evidence base for this work. And I'll come back to that point further down. The other thing to sort of mention at the outset is this grant is around legal support and advice, and not other sort of general types of support. So and there needs to have been a track record of delivering legal support and advice services. So just bear that in mind when you're thinking about whether or not you're eligible to apply. Just going to go through the objectives, because this is, possibly the most important thing to bear in mind when you're filling in your application. There are 4 objectives. I'm going to go through each one. The first one is around support. So this is about providing services that support the earliest possible intervention for litigants in person. So we're really interested in organisations who are thinking upstream to the people maybe before they would knock on the door of the advice agency and looking to find where they are and supporting them as early as possible in their legal journey. We're also interested in support services and advice services that lead up to and include tribunal and court proceedings. So it's the whole kind of journey, if you like, but particularly interested in hearing from you about those two ends of it. The second objective is around connection. And what we mean by that is focusing on what people actually need. So whether that might be the provision of digital services and remote service provision for people who need them, or it might be actually the provision of in-person services, because that's what people need. But we're looking to hear from you about how you figured out what it is that your users need and how to design your services for them accordingly. The third objective is around collaboration. So this is about organisations that work well as part of a network or a partnership. It doesn't need to be a formal partnership. We just want to understand how you fit into the ecosystem, your understanding of the organisations that work around you. And the fourth objective is around evaluations. I've mentioned this already. So we're interested in building an evidence base of what works and what doesn't. The what doesn't bit is very important. We're interested in learning about that too. And we're keen to work with organisations that kind of share that interest. So those are the four key things that you need to be thinking about when you fill in the application form. Eligibility, hopefully this is really clear, that we sometimes get applications unless everybody has to be a registered charity and based in England and Wales. Everybody has to have a track record of delivering legal advice and support services, and that can be in person or remotely. If you're not sure if you're eligible, do get in touch with us and check. I don't want anybody wasting time filling in an application form to be told actually you weren't eligible in the first place. So do get in touch. The types of things that we will fund through this funding, we've listed there, things like triage and referral, early legal advice. It might be the provision of an online resource, assisted digital types of support. It could be an outreach service. We'll fund partnership working in order to ensure that you're getting services to the right people at the right time, and also support, advice and representation at court. You don't have to be doing all of those things. It's absolutely fine. If you do one of them, you do a combination of them. If you do something similar that isn't listed there, get in touch. But you absolutely don't need to be doing them all. If you do them all, that's also fine, but it won't harm your application if you don't. Other things that we'll fund, and Matt will pick this up in the talk about the budget, is the ensuring that you have set aside enough resource to deal with the data collection and the learning aspects of the programme, and also contribution to your organisation's running costs. There's a list there of what we won't fund, which is hopefully self-explanatory, but we always ensure that we are not duplicating legal aid funding. We won't fund capital, research, lobbying, and we don't fund universities. We often get asked that, which is why that's there explicitly. There's a list there in the guidance about the kinds of organisations that we're looking to work with. And I've mentioned some of this already, listening to what your client base needs and making changes as a result. A commitment to learning and building an evidence base, being able to explain the difference that your work makes. And we'll come on to see there's a question in the application form about that. Connection to the community, both in terms of internally and staffing and governance, but also in terms of the partnerships you have. So we're very interested to hear about that. Organisations that share knowledge and best practice, that might be within partnerships, or it might be around kind of broader influencing work. Having organisational infrastructure and capacity to work in partnership, and experience of successfully delivering these types of services. So those sort of organisations that we are interested. Just a quick note on the funding. You'll have seen a note here, this is kind of new for us to look at it in this way. 15% of the total funding pot that we will be allocating will be allocated specifically to services that are court-based and provide support to litigants in person, whether that's to help them prepare for the hearing or support on the day of the hearing. This part of the funding will have slightly different monitoring requirements, and the organisation will need to have a track record of delivering that type of service. So it's something you're interested in setting up. This isn't the round for you. It's something that you need to have been doing previously. And you will also need to show that you've got an agreement from the relevant court to do it, which if you're already doing it, you should have, so that shouldn't be a problem. I've already mentioned the size of the grants. Applications need to be submitted online, and we'll go through that in a second. And then there's a list of FAQs that I'm not going to go through because you can check all those out for yourself. So that's the overall guidance. I'm just going to quickly run you through the application form, which, as I said, needs to be submitted online. Just a couple of things on the application to mention. When you've completed the form, slightly confusingly, there's a submit button, and then you need to scroll down to confirm your submission. So don't just click submit and think you're done, you're not. You need to confirm as well. And where there's a drop-down list on the application form, you may need to scroll down. Not all the selections are immediately visible, but do scroll down to make your selections. So yeah, just a couple of practical points on the application. The first page of the application form tells you what you should already know from the guidance, but there's just a bit of a reminder there to sort of focus the mind before you jump in. Contact details and details of the organisation hopefully is self-explanatory. The only reason we asked you about whether you've previously received funding from us is so that we're not asking you for information, again, that we already hold. It won't impact on your chances of funding. Not to do with that, it's simply for our internal purposes and so that we don't have to ask questions we already know the answer to. Right, so the questions. The first thing to say is please answer the question that we've asked, and not a question that you were expecting to be asked, or you thought that we should have asked, or you thought that we meant when we did ask this one. And the biggest piece of feedback we always make at the end of a grants round is that organisations haven't answered the questions properly. I'm sorry if that sounds really obvious, but I think, you know, it's worth repeating because it does happen. So the first question is around your experience of delivering services to sustain and improve access to early social welfare, family legal support and advice. So be specific, tell us exactly what you've done to do that. Don't give us a generic overview of your organisation, give us the specific nature of the services that have done that. Or where court and tribunal proceedings are needed, what you've done to help people navigate the process effectively. Now, you don't need to answer both parts of that question. If you don't provide support with court or tribunal proceedings, or if you don't provide early social welfare advice, don't ask the bit that's not relevant to you. That's absolutely fine. Use the whole 250-word limit to answer the part of the question that's relevant, but do be specific about the nature of the service. Don't tell us about other services that you provide. Don't give us a generic overview. Don't talk about why the service is needed. Just give us the specifics on the nature of what you've done and your track record of doing it. 1B is all about barriers and how you identify barriers. So we've got a list there of what people have told us before are some of the barriers that people face when accessing services. It may be that your experience isn't listed there. That's fine, you can add it in. But what we're really interested in is how you're addressing these barriers. So you've identified what barriers people are experiencing. What are you doing to ensure that your services are accessible and inclusive? Specifically around how you support people from one of the groups that have protected characteristics. Again, be as specific as possible. Give examples where you can. That will score you more points. 1D, what systems and processes do you have in place to ensure your services reach and prioritise those most in need and support? Again, this is about what you've learned. What have you learned from your service delivery to ensure that you have a way of working that gets to the people that most need your services? So this might be around your partnerships, your outreach, your approach to triage, and maybe other things that you're doing. But give us, again, be specific, give examples, explain to us why you've done something in a particular way to ensure that you are getting to the people who most need you. We don't have a set idea of what that should look like. You just tell us what you do, why you do it. So you're the experts. 1E, and this is hard. I recognise this is hard, but there's a reason why there's a 100-word limit on this, is that we want a brief answer around the difference that your organisation makes. Last time we asked this question, a lot of people just told us what their organisation does. It's not the same thing. We want to know what you think and how you would describe the impact that your organisation has and how you measure that. So what do you do? What M&E methods do you have in place? How are you using your data and learning? And what is it telling you? It's all right if what it's telling you, isn't the most amazing result, or not able to demonstrate impact in the way that you'd like to be able to do if you had more resource. That's fine. Just tell us what you're doing. Sort of an honest and limited answer to that question is much better than a generic one that doesn't actually tell us anything. So that's the first set of questions. Then moving on, you'll see we've explained, and those of you who've been funded by us before will recognise these stages that we use. We know they're slightly contrived, but we do that so that we can measure the effectiveness of each of the stages. And that's why we ask questions about them. So under question 2, you just need to tell us what services you're proposing to deliver, both in terms of areas of law, what communities will be benefiting from those services, and how they'll be delivered in terms of remotely and or in person. And you'll see there are 3 sections there for you to complete in relation to each of the 3 stages. We then, section 3 is around the finance questions, which Matt is going to talk to you about next. So sorry, that's a bit of a counter through it, but Matt, can I hand over to you to talk through the finance bit?
You certainly can. Thanks, Claire. I'm going to share my screen. I've got a brief PowerPoint just to show you through the cash flow forecasting spreadsheet that we've asked you to complete. So bear with me while I share the screen. And start the slideshow. You should all open the cash flow forecasting spreadsheet, and what you should see is something along these lines. I'll go through each section in a moment, but let's be really clear about what we're looking for. Part of this is about gathering data, as Claire's already said, that we can use in the context of arguing for future funding. Part of it is about making sure that your organisation is solvent and thus able to deliver the project that you're applying for funding for. Part of it is about looking at what level of reserves you've got, partly around solvency, but also just to make sure that you're not sitting on huge amounts of unspent money that perhaps you should be spending first rather than applying for this funding. And that's particularly pertinent when we're looking at trying to evaluate between the foundations to determine who gets funding, because clearly different organisations are in different financial positions. But mostly this is about making sure that you're solvent and capable of delivering the project, and that we're not going to find ourselves in a situation halfway through of having to go through the awful process of trying to unravel a situation where funding's been granted and the project can't be delivered. First of all, when you go to complete the spreadsheet, please put in your organisation's name. You'll be surprised at how many of these we had responded or we had returned for previous assessments, and the organisation hadn't put its name in there. We do try to keep them linked to your application, but it's incredibly helpful if you put your organisation's name at the top box on the spreadsheet. The second thing we're asking for you is about cash and reserves. This might seem an odd division, but some organisations keep their reserves separately in a nice little deposit account, and then they have their normal operating client account, office account or operating account in which they've got other cash. Other organisations will have all of this money just in one account. Put it in a way which is easier for you, but don't double count. So if you've got £200,000, of which you count £100,000 as reserves and £100,000 as your monthly operating cash, then put £100,000 in the reserves box and £100,000 in your current account balance box. Don't put 200 in one and 100 in the other, because that makes it look as if you've got 300,000 when in fact you've only got 200,000. So put it in a way that helps us understand what your cash position is, and put it in a way which most accurately reflects the way you treat it within your organisation. Please don't include at this point non-cash reserves, so work in progress, money's owed to you. All of those are fine for accounting purposes, but they don't help when you need to access cash. So please don't include those. What we're talking about here is unrestricted cash that's available to you at the point of time of completion of this spreadsheet. The next bit is a statement, relatively simple, of your income and expenditure across the year. Now, it's worth saying this spreadsheet covers a 12-month period. Obviously, the funding is for a longer period, but what we're looking for is solvency across the first financial year of this grant. We've tried to give you enough headings here to sensibly record your income. Please include the amount you're applying for in terms of this grant, just so that we can see what the impact of that is in relation to your income, but also include it in your expenditure. So if you're applying for £100,000 income from this grant, then please put that in your expenditure too, so we can see it both sides of the equation. Trusts and foundations restricted is, well, as it sounds, income from trusts and foundations is restricted. Same, anything that you've got in terms of restricted government funding or local authority funding. And then if it's restricted and doesn't fit into any of those, put it in other. And then we've got unrestricted, again, unrestricted trust and foundation grants, you know, an AB charitable trust grant typically is unrestricted. Legal aid is unrestricted, again, unrestricted government funding or local authority funding could go in there. And again, if you've got any other sources of unrestricted funding, just pop it into other. And if that isn't enough, then you've got another final category for other income, and also earned or any contract income. So if you're selling services, if you've got government contracts that don't fit into any of the above, then put it in there. As long as we've got a good understanding of your income across the year and when it comes in, then that will help us. We would prefer you to do this cash flow monthly. But if you can't do it monthly because your figures don't lend themselves to that, then please do it quarterly. So, you know, at least do it quarterly. Please don't do it annually. That's not going to help us. So if you can't do it monthly, then go for April, July and the quarter months. There is guidance, which is now online on completing this spreadsheet. So refer to that if you need to. In terms of expenditure, what we want you to do is just group together all of your relevant expenditure and put it in on a monthly basis, including the expenditure for this project. One thing I hadn't considered is, of course, the project expenditure is longer than the grant income, but because we're asking you to declare the income from this grant, match it. So if you're declaring all of the income from this grant, then declare all of the expenditure from this grant, even if it's slightly artificial across the 12-month period. We want to see what the position is. Then you have a section at the bottom which allows you to set out how you're intending to spend the grant across the full period. Again, don't go into minute detail here, but break it down into key headings: staff costs, contributing to operating costs, key areas of expenditure associated with this grant across the full period, just so that we get an idea about how you're intending to spend the money, which proportion of it is staff and salary costs, which proportion of it goes to other costs associated with the organisation. So if you put some detail there. And lastly, if you think you've said anything which is in need of a bit of explanation, then there's a notes box at the bottom. Please use that just to explain either anything in relation to the IOTLS budget, or indeed anything in relation to your finances. Preempting a question, and I can't see the chat at the moment, if you are a smaller part of a larger organisation, so if you are an advice team, a legal team within, say, a housing trust or a bigger organisation, a larger settlement, what we're interested here is the budget for your team and the income and expenditure for your team. So no point telling us you're part of an organisation which has a turnover of £27 million if your bit is only 120,000. Doesn't really help us with the evaluation of the project. So what we want you to do is focus on the bit that's relevant to your team as part of the larger organisation. Okay. Claire, is there anything else that you would like me to run through in relation to that?
No,
otherwise I'll try to pick up some questions from the chat.
Yeah, I think there are some finance questions in the chat, so we'll come back to you as we go through them. Lovely. Okay, let's move on to the questions then. Shivana's going to help me by reading them out to me, because it's quite hard for me to check the chat. So Shivana, do you want to kick off with some questions?
Yeah, of course. And there's quite a few questions in the chat. I think the first one, if we can cover and then I'll work through, is we've had a couple of comments around partnership applications and whether we would accept applications from partnerships.
We don't need to, so I'd suggest people apply as an organisation in their own right. If you've got a specific reason why you want to apply in partnership, get in touch with us and we'll have a chat with you about it. But generally speaking, don't complicate things. What we're interested in really is how you work in partnership with others, and you need to address that in your application form.
And then moving on to the next question, a question is whether local authorities can be partners or subcontractors.
Refer to my previous answer. We're not specifically looking for partnership applications. You need to be a registered charity, so obviously we wouldn't be making a grant to a local authority, and I'm not sure why we would be considering subcontractual arrangements. But again, if you want to get in touch, if you've got a specific reason why you absolutely think you need to do it this way, get in touch and we'll have a chat about it.
Thank you. So I'm capturing them as we go through, because there's quite a few for the finance section. But carrying on, will this grant support immigration advice work?
Yes.
Thank you. It's easy. And would it be open to applications about support and advice for asylum support appeals, such as housing and financial support for those within the asylum system?
Yes.
Thank you. Will the programme fund legal advice on employment rights?
Yes.
And can we confirm that the discrimination in the definition of social welfare legal advice includes discrimination in employment?
Yes. These are good.
Yeah. We're racing through. So can we apply covering just one aspect of social welfare law? Yes,
absolutely. And you're not going to score more points for covering more areas of law, and likewise not for covering more groups of people. So if you, I don't know, deliver benefits advice to a Somali organisation, that's, you're not going to do any worse than an organisation that's covering across 10 areas of law and, a dozen different communities. So just, focus on what you think you do well and what you're good at and what your area of expertise is.
Thank you. Next question. Okay, so it was a question that came in from Cascade, and others said it would be useful for them to know the answer. So it was in relation to a charity providing free services, but with a model for some chargeable work. So it may be, for example, stage 1 work is free, but at stage 2, they may charge depending on whether there's extensive case building or, that specific specialist work is required. So the question is, would we accept applications from organisations?
Yeah, as long as they're an eligible organisation, so they're a registered charity with a track record of providing the services. If they've got paid for services within their model, that's fine. Obviously, we would not be funding the work which is being paid from an alternative source. So if in your example, Shivana, there was a free service at stage 1 that moved on to a paid service at stage 2, we would not be funding stage 2 work.
Thank you. So the question about avoiding duplication with legal aid. So in the particular work of this organisation of Cascade, it exists, iLegal Help. It's means tested, and disabled people may or may not qualify, but the real issue is that they can't get it because legal aid firms can't make money from offering it. That's why we exist. Is that okay?
No, sorry. If the work is eligible for legal aid funding, we will not fund it.
Thank you. How or where in the application form should we be asserting an interest in providing second-tier expertise to other organisations working in this field, since we have it and aim to strengthen it? Is this something we would cover?
It's not something that we're particularly looking for in the guidance or in the application. If you think it's relevant and strengthens your answers to the questions that we've asked, then mention it. But bear in mind the word count is quite limited. So you do, this goes to my point about focus on the questions that we've asked. If you think it actually strengthens one of those questions, then fine. But otherwise, don't focus on it.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, it's working my way through. Will the data collected inform the civil legal aid review?
No.
Okay. And then someone's asking for clarity on what legal problems fall within the definition of social welfare law for the purposes of this grant.
There's an FAQ that deals with that. So if you want to have a look at that, if it's still not clear, let us know.
Yeah, someone's asking if we can indicate based on previous funding what the chances of success will be for applicants.
I don't know, because I don't know how many applications we're going to get, but that's why I mentioned we're likely to make between 60 or 70 grants. There are 180 people on the call. If you all submitted an application and nobody else did, well, you can do the maths, but without knowing how many applications we get, it's really hard to tell. But hopefully that gives you an idea. You know, something between 1 in 3 and 1 in 5, unless lots more people apply. Sorry, that's really unhelpful. But it's an open funding round. Who knows how many applications we're going to get?
Okay, sorry, it's a steady stream coming in the chat. I'm going to have to leave that for now. Okay, someone's asking, given this is Ministry of Justice money, they're interested to know if there are any strings attached in terms of organisations kind of value their independence as it enables them to challenge government when necessary. So they want to understand whether we'll be in effect be restricted in this respect.
All the restrictions on this funding are articulated in the guidance and the application. So there are restrictions on it in terms of things that we won't fund and things that we will fund, but there's nothing hidden. So absolutely, you know, if you, for example, run a benefits service where every case you manage is against the DWP, then that will be funded. It's not, you know, it's not a case of you can't use this money to challenge the government. What it won't be used for is and specific policy work, specific influencing work.
Thank you. Can organisations apply for funding for more than one project?
That's a good question. Did we agree this, Shabana? I can't remember.
I would have thought that within the application they can provide more than one of the services, the types of services we've specified, but I'm not aware that we would accept more than one application from organisations.
I agree. Let's add that to the FAQ. So it's one application per organisation. Otherwise, we'll never get through more than 3 weeks.
That is very true. So that's fine. Next one. What are the difference between this and the help accessing legal support, so the HALS grant, if any? I know you've covered
sounds
that.
like a university dissertation question, doesn't it? I'm not going to answer that. Sorry, it would take too long. Like look at the HALS guidance, look at this guidance, compare and contrast. It's been built on it. There are changes. If they've got any specific questions, then ask. But it would take too long to answer that. Sorry.
So if we provide both ends, so triage and tribunal, but we're only seeking funding for one, should we mention that we do both or solely focus on the particular service they're applying for?
So in question 1, where you're talking about your track record, talk about all of it and then focus on the specifics in the question about stages.
Thank you. Do you have to apply in the area advice where you already help, or can you address gaps in provision locally and answer the question about experience based on the different area you already deliver for?
Yes, you can. That's fine. You can be setting up a new service providing you've got track record in doing that. Yeah.
Okay, so when answering the question about the impact, so the difference that they make, is this for the specific service or the organisational impact?
Good question. If you can do both, that would be great. Otherwise, I'd be more interested in the service than the organisation.
And a question, will we be asking for any quality assurance regarding the advice aspect? And a slightly related question, will we be monitoring who the funding goes to in relation to the size of the organisation and the client group served?
We're not asking for a quality mark because this is around support and advice. Yes, obviously we do monitor where the money goes. Quite important that we do that.
Yeah, definitely. There will be some data collection requirements for this funding, most definitely. Is there a general additional amount we can apply for, or is it on a needs only basis? I'm not sure I'm understanding that question.
Yeah, no, I think I understand that. So we've given this bracket of 100 to 200,000. It's a guide. You know, you can apply for less than that. You can apply for more than that. Just bear in mind that there's a limited pot of funding. So if you're asking for more, you really need to be very clear about why that's needed. And we'll probably be expecting kind of, you know, obviously more service provision, reaching more people, something quite comprehensive. So again, you know, do get in touch if you want to talk about the specifics of that. But given the limited funding and the number of organisations we're anticipating applying, I think the number of grants we'll make over the 200,000 will be relatively small.
Thank you. You've answered a few of the questions actually there with that. So that's good. Will the programme support work that provides legal advice to assist people who've been subjected to hate crimes, hate incidents, discrimination?
So it's not for supporting people through the criminal justice system. So if it's for the civil discrimination element, then yes, but otherwise not. It depends which side of the civil crime divide it's on.
Thank you. So a couple of finance questions. So Matt, you may want to answer this. So actually, Claire, you may also answer. Is there an acceptable level of reserves that we're looking for here, either in months or amount?
Do you want to answer it, Matt, or shall I?
Yeah, no, we don't have a set level, but I mean, obviously, you know, healthy reserves are somewhere in the 3 to 6 month region. If we've got an organisation sitting on 2 years worth of operating cash and they're asking for £100,000 and they're sitting on £500,000 of unspent, unneeded money, then obviously, you know, we'll take that into consideration. So we want organisations to have safe levels of reserves. What we don't want them to be doing is sitting on money they should be spending. So the answer is no, but we'll know it when we see it.
Thank you. So someone's asked a question about if applying as a partnership, but I think we've already answered that previously. So I'm going to move on. So we shouldn't be expecting 5 organisations to fill out one spreadsheet. I hope we've answered that. So someone's asked, can you please clarify that all project expense, which is funded by the grant, should be declared as cash outflow in the same month that the funding comes in?
It doesn't matter to an extent. I mean, as long as we can see the in and out for this project, then whether you put it across the period of the 12 months or, but yeah, it makes sense if you assumed, for instance, the grant came in and I don't know what month the grant is likely to be paid, Claire, so you might have to.
July.
July.
So if you put it in both, it wouldn't matter. The point is, we just want to see the impact of this on your overall financial position.
Thank you.
Whatever way you choose to do it, explain it in the notes box at the bottom.
Okay, someone's asking, saying that they don't, obviously they haven't prepared a budget or cash flow including this fund, but we would need it included. I think I can answer that, say we would want it included in income and expenditure. Please.
And we want it on our spreadsheet. Don't please provide us with your existing cash flow forecast. We want it in the spreadsheet so that we can see similar information from all parties. My brain aches from trying to decode the myriad different approaches that organisations take to cash flow forecasting. So please use our spreadsheet and don't overthink it. You know, the spreadsheet's a template. It's there to help you put stuff in the most obvious boxes, but don't go down the rabbit hole. You know, just if you can't quite work out where to put something, put it in other. It will be fine. Yeah. We'll work it out.
Yeah, there's the notes section available there as well for clarity. We've had a couple of questions just asking for you to reiterate, is the cash flow for the whole organisation or just for the specific area or team where you're applying for? So Matt, do you want to reiterate?
Yeah, I can reiterate. If your whole organisation, okay, if you are an advice organisation, if you are an organisation, a law centre for CAB, a similar type organisation, then it should be for the whole organisation. we don't want this to be just for the team doing this particular piece of work. So, you know, if you're a normal sized standard advice organisation, if on the other hand you are a tiny part of a massive organisation or bigger organisational settlement that doesn't have anything to do with advice, so you're the advice section in a housing association, or you are part of a larger settlement, you know, good examples might be Mary Ward, where there's a broader settlement of which advice is a part, then obviously we want to understand the bit that's associated with advice, not, you know, the other bits that have nothing to do with any of the stuff that we're considering here. So hopefully that clarifies that question.
Someone's asking an M&E question. So they're asking whether they would use their own methods to measure data collection and learning, or will be expected to use the funders' measurements. So I think we can say that there will be a template. Claire did mention in the beginning, but for those that may have missed it, it is currently being finalised, the monitoring and evaluation template, which will include data collection, so both quantitative and qualitative data requirements. So we would be expecting you to complete those as part of the grant. And that's why we're also encouraging organisations, when filling out the cash flow forecast and the budget, to assign budget from this funding for the monitoring and evaluation. So a couple of questions here about the same thing, saying if they applied, are there possibilities that we may accept applications but request that there was an alternative or a lower amount than what was placed in the application?
Yes, that's quite possible. You know, we will fund the best applications, but we'll also try and make the best use of the funds available. So if you ask for £500,000 or something that we think you can do for 250, then we'll come back to you. Of course, you do not have to accept any reduced offer. You don't have to accept any offer at all. And you know, we'd obviously have a conversation with you about reducing the output as well if we were to make a reduced offer.
Someone's asked if you need to be registered on the MOJ portal. No, you do not.
No.
You make applications via our website. So you will see that there is a link to the online form. And I can say that my colleague has very efficiently just placed the Word version on the web page. So you'll now be able to download the Word version of the form. It is available.
Well done, team. That was very efficient.
Yeah, well done. That's very quick. That's another question. So let's have a look. So our project will be focused on stage 1 early intervention, looking at providing digital resources and advice, etc., to welfare rights of workers, aimed at what claimants need to do in terms of information they give to work coaches. Is this eligible?
Let's pick that up separately.
Yeah, I think we'll need to. So people again asking, can we apply for both the new grant, this current grant, and HALS? The HALS grant isn't open for applications. So the HALS grant is an existing programme that is due to come to an end on the 30th of June. So
and it doesn't matter whether you have it or not. So just forget about HALS. This is a fresh application.
Yeah. If we are applying for funding for advisors, is it acceptable to also include an amount for admin support?
Yes.
Yes. I think we've answered that. So unfortunately, we don't have the templates available today for the monitoring and evaluation data, but we will be making those available as soon as we have them finalised. Someone's asking, will the grant be paid in instalments or in one payment per financial year?
Thereby hangs a tale. Shabana, I can't remember where we got to with the payment schedule.
So we are anticipating making the payments as 2 payments per financial year across the period of the grant. So what that would mean in theory is one payment up front at the start of the grant, which is due to launch and obviously begin on the 1st of July, and then a second payment around November. And then we'll do the same the following year. Can we include M&E costs in the budget?
Yeah.
Yes. We are expecting organisations to assign budget to ensure that they can complete the monitoring and evaluation requirements. Sorry, so someone's just clarifying regarding the question from Cascade earlier, saying they'd asked about second tier advice as a service. is that the guidance refers to hub services? We would assume we can put that in stage 2.
I don't understand that question. Can we pick that up separately?
Yeah, let's pick that up separately. Okay, someone's asking if a not-for-profit organisation that's not registered charity can apply.
No.
Unfortunately, no, they won't be able to. So I'm just going through. Is there an informal maximum budget for data collection and reporting?
No, just tell us what you think you need.
So sorry, there's no specific, but
I appreciate people aren't going to be able to know what they think they need until they've seen the template, but that's fine. We will share that as soon as we've got it. I'm sorry it's not available now. But once you've had a look at it, just give some thought to it. Also, if you need to vary your budget, the team will hate me for saying this, but if you do need to vary your budget later on, we can have that conversation.
Are we expecting organisations to forecast how many people they expect to support or outcomes they hope to achieve as part of this tender?
No.
No. Yep, someone's asking if they're a small advice organisation, there's some policy influencing work. Should we exclude that policy influencing work from the cash flow and organisational budget? Or is it okay to include it so you can see the impact?
Just include it, that's fine. We're not going to fund it, but just include it.
I think Matt's gone back on that actually, thank you. Are there restrictions on what the funding can be used for?
Yes.
This is not core funding. They've asked if it's core funding.
No, so as I just went through, hopefully in the application form, it should be clear that those are the services that we're looking to fund, the ones that we've set out in the guidance in the application, not anything else.
Again, I'll just reiterate that if anyone has got any specific questions, please do email grants@atjf.org. .uk, so we'll come back on those. So because someone's asked, we've answered about the question regarding the schedule. Will those that are previously funded, will their performance under that grant be part of the assessment for this new one?
No, I can't emphasise enough that whether you've been funded by us previously or not is completely irrelevant to this application. We'll be looking at your application form. We might have a look at your accounts and your website. Any previous relationship with the foundation or not isn't going to make any difference.
Okay, Matt, a question for you. So someone's asked, can you clarify what you're expecting in the 12-month income and expenditure? Do you want us to include the whole 21-month grant in that 12-month? Clearly, this will show a disproportionate impact on a 12-month budget.
Yeah, as we said, you can include, if you're going to include the whole of the income and the whole of expenditure, just put it into July. As long as we can see the impact in and out of the entirety of this grant, then please put it in there. If you do spread it across, then tell us, because we need to understand, because otherwise it will have a disproportionate impact. But yeah, if you apply for £100,000 and you put in the income £100,000 from this grant in July and an expenditure of £100,000 in July, that's all we need to know. We just want to see the overall impact of this on the financial health of the organisation. So let's worry about it that way.
Thanks, Matt. Someone's asked, Sarah, can the grant be used for existing work?
Yes.
Yes, it can. And Jackie's asked, will you require any interim monitoring or evaluation before the end of the project period?
Yes, but we'll pick that up in the M&E template. But yes, there will be.
And actually, that I can see is the end. I can't see any more questions. If I've missed your question, please do shout. Sorry, the question's coming in. Yeah, we're not advising what percentage of the money should be allocated to monitoring and evaluation. We're requiring organisations to commit to that, knowing that there will be requirements to produce more qualitative and quantitative data periodically throughout the 21-month period. So I'm just working through, a couple more have come in. Would a project linked to SEND SEND law be of interest? It wasn't specifically mentioned in the guidelines.
Yes, it will. Sorry, we will amend the guidance to cover that.
Can the budget be allocated unevenly over the period? I think Matt has answered that question already. Yeah.
Yes.
Do we, sorry. Okay. Can't see, are there any more? I know Matt's been going in and answering in the chat. Oh, do we accept applications from charities that are newly registered and are yet to submit annual accounts?
Yes, that's fine, but bear in mind you do need to demonstrate a track record. So if your track record has occurred before you've registered, that's fine. Yeah, the track record point is important.
And will the number of awards be broken down in geographical areas or population levels or areas of high social deprivation, etc., or is it just on the quality of each application?
It's a good question. It's something we'll take into account, but the most important thing is the quality of the application, because as we know, there's need and demand everywhere. But we will be looking at geographic spread as well.
I think someone's repeated the question again. We will make the recording for this available, so appreciate there's quite a lot of information. So there will be a recording and it will be made available on the web page. Are we eligible to apply for funding if we're the instructing agent to barristers?
It depends whether you think that you meet the guidance criteria. If having reviewed the guidance you're not sure, then get in touch and we'll give you a view.
Zainab, I know you put your question in around will the programme support work that provides legal advice to assist people who've been subjected to Islamophobic hate crimes, hate incidents and discrimination, which I know Claire answered earlier.
Yeah, so basically we'll fund the civil side of that, not the criminal.
Someone's asking about the weighting of scoring for finance and the question elements.
So finance is more of a sense check than a score. So largely speaking, we will be assessing on the answers to the questions. We are asking for financial information, as Matt explained, to largely just part of our due diligence and to sort of address any particular red flags. But it's the, Matt doesn't mind me saying this, it's the narrative assessment that's more important.
And we do have a question from Tom, and I do understand that, you know, asking for an estimated date for when the M&E requirements will be finalised.
As soon as we can. Trust us, the team are working very, very hard to get this finalised, and it's not entirely within our power, but we are doing everything we can, and as soon as we can, we will share it.
Yes. As we've said before, we know that we will be requiring qualitative and quantitative information, data collection periodically throughout the grant, but yes, we will share that as soon as it is available. So we've just come to time. So actually that was very good. It's 11:57. I can't see any further questions, but again, please do feel free to email and any other questions. And there were a couple in there that I think we will come back to separately.
Yeah, I mean, if they relate to a specific organisation, it's probably better for us to speak to you separately. So do get in touch. So yes, thank you very much for taking the time this morning. It's lovely to see you all. We will share the link to this recording just in case you want to see it again. I don't like seeing myself on a screen, so the idea that anybody would want to rewatch this fills me with horror, but anyway, we'll update the FAQs with some of the questions from this morning. If you think of anything else, do email us and we will answer that as well. Don't, you know, the team are very lovely and approachable and brilliant, so they're very capable of helping, and that's what we're here for. So don't sort of worry about, or should I say this, should I do that? Just get in touch and ask. It's absolutely what we're here to do. And finally, good luck. I'm sorry we're not going to be able to fund you all, but good luck with the application, and have a great rest of your Monday. Bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks. Bye-bye.